All right, welcome to U.S. History Notes 5.6, the end of the Vietnam War. This is the last set of notes for part 2 of your study guide on Unit 5. And these are going to be the shortest of the set of notes, so you can be happy about that. I know the other ones got a little bit long. This one will be nice and short. So we're going to start with Nixon and talking about President Nixon. Now, Nixon, we talked about in the last set of notes, he was really involved in Vietnamization and pulling American troops out of the war and really starting to end it. So he ends the war, but there are still some American troops, and his vice president, Ford, who is going to become president because Nixon resigns in 1974. This is because of the Watergate scandal, and we will talk all about the Watergate scandal in part 3 of the study guide of this unit. So just know it's coming. Don't worry about it. But Ford is going to be the last American president involved in the Vietnam War. So he becomes involved in 74. He is the one who ends the Vietnam War. So in 1973, right as Nixon is ending things, but remember he was also like bombing Cambodia and invading in Laos. He's looking for North Vietnamese, trying to stop that Ho Chi Minh Trail, and really made him unpopular and made some of his actions unpopular. Congress got upset about this, and Congress decided that the president's power to commit troops that they gave him, if you remember back when Johnson was president, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, they decided that was too much power. So they're going to pass the War Powers Act in 1973. So it was okay for Johnson, it went too far, now they're ready, they need to pull it back. So some of the details of this War Powers Act. The president can commit troops. So something happens, the president has 48 hours to notify Congress that he has sent troops somewhere to fight. He can only have them there for 60 days without congressional approval. So Congress can approve it and extend it past 60 days, but he needs the Congress approval for that. If Congress does not approve it within 60 days, the president has to pull the troops out. And Congress can demand the return of those troops. So they can say, no, you can't have them there. You have to pull them back out. So that gives Congress some of their powers back. They gave it up in the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. The War Powers Act of 1973 takes those powers back. And so didn't make Nixon very happy. But remember, he had that invasion of Cambodia that happened. Then we had the Kent State shooting that happened. So he really had some issues with that. So he was very upset that they passed this and were limiting him, but he was trying to get us out of the war. So trying to get out of the war, Ford is now in charge, and in 1975, North Vietnam gained some ground. So we had had a peace agreement between the U.S. and Vietnam, and North Vietnam, but they really still wanted to be one Vietnam. So the North Vietnamese troops attacked South Vietnam in 1975, and they kept winning. So they just continued moving south, winning as they went. So they're taking over, and you can kind of see like they would just move through the south and take over. Okay, and they were aiming for one place in particular here, and I'll mark it with a pen. Saigon, your capital city of Saigon. That is what they want to take, because if you can take Saigon, that is the capital city, that is the city that everyone, sees as your political center. If you can take that, you win the war. So they're really looking for a unified Vietnam. The North Vietnamese don't want a North Vietnam and a South Vietnam, they want a Vietnam. So in April of 1975, they unify Vietnam into one country. Also, Cambodia surrenders to the Khmer Rouge, who are the communist leaders. So Cambodia also becomes communist at essentially the same time. And the last Americans leave Saigon. So while we had agreed that the war was ended, we still had some ambassadors, some diplomats, some people like that there. And we have Americans leaving Saigon at the last minute. So this is the walls, this picture at the top left, the walls of the U.S. Embassy, people trying to get over for evacuation. This tank is the North Vietnamese coming into the city. This picture on the top right is the North Vietnamese coming into Saigon. So you can actually see where the tanks and the fighting is happening and people in the streets moving. And this picture here on the bottom right, again, a hugely famous picture from the Vietnam War. This is actually Americans evacuating off the top of the embassy as this picture above them of the North Vietnamese coming into the city. So the North Vietnamese are literally rolling their tanks into the city as the Americans are evacuating onto helicopters to get out of the city. So when you hear people talk about how the US lost the Vietnam War, pictures like this are one of the reasons people say that. So the US people had to evacuate, they had to leave. And so here we have Saigon surrenders to the Viet Cong, withdrawal ends role of US, and we see that evacuation. It really is seen as a fall for the US. So Ford uses this to try to ease some of the tensions with communist countries, because now Vietnam is communist and we didn't stop it, we didn't fight it, we just evacuated. So he has the Helsinki Accords in 1975. It's a summit with the Soviet Union and many other countries where they agreed to cooperate economically, respect existing national boundaries, and promote human rights between all of them. So it's a step in the right direction. It's an agreement with those countries we're talking. We also have the SALT talks, SALT I in 1975. These are the strategic arms limitation talks. That's just it, arms, military limitation. This is the US and Soviet Union. The two sides actually agree to limit the arms race, especially nuclear weapons. So we agree to quit adding so many and to eventually to cut down some of what we have. So we have SALT I, we will later on have SALT II, but SALT I is under Ford, he is the first. So he's trying to work and continue that idea of détente and really ease the tensions and make things better. So does that mean the Cold War's done? We're getting along with the Soviet Union, right? Well, the Vietnam War is done, but the Cold War is not. The Cold War is going to continue all the way through the end of the 80s. But that is the end of your notes, and we will start the next set with part 3 of the study guide.